Hi everyone, I'm Jane. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Little Lips Knitting, and this episode I'm going to talk about everything that I knit in 2024. This isn't going to be a very long video probably because I don't think I really knit that much this year. Even though I knit every single day, I feel like I rarely have that many finished objects to show for it. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think part of the reason for that is because I always have like several projects on the go at once. So I always think that it's interesting at the end of the year to look back on the things that I've knitted anyway and, you know, compare the things at the end of the year to the beginning of the year and see how like my knitting style and knitting preferences have changed. See if I've like learned any new techniques or pushed myself in any way. 2023, for example, I did a lot more colour work, and that was when I really like pushed myself with that and became a lot more confident with colour work. And my goals for 2024 with knitting, the first one was to make a colour work jumper for myself, and the second one was to release my first knitting pattern, which I did do, and I did both of those, so I'm very pleased about that. I'm not going to talk about things necessarily in order, firstly because that's really difficult. As I said before, I always have like several projects on the go at once, so it's really difficult to say like which one came first because I was probably working on them at the same time. And the other reason is because for a few of these things I made the same pattern multiple times, so it would just save me kind of like jumping backwards and forth and repeating myself. So I'm going to kind of group them together and maybe talk about like the jumpers together, the socks and accessories together, and hopefully it'll make sense. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about, I've already sort of mentioned. I said that my goal for this year was to make a colour work jumper for myself. So for Christmas last year I got a knitting kit to make the Bressay sweater by Wallin. The pattern is from her book Shetland. It's absolutely beautiful. There's some really amazing patterns in that book. I made the Bora cowl last year, but I made it into a scarf and I absolutely loved it. And that scarf was my first really big colour work project. Before that I'd only made some baby jumpers. They were quite simple, so they only really used 2, maybe 3 colours, and the actual like colour work, it was, you know, it was very simple. You were just maybe doing like 1 stitch of the main colour, 1 stitch of the contrast colour. There wasn't really any motifs going on, so they were really easy in comparison. So after making that scarf, I wanted to do something not necessarily bigger because the scarf maybe actually had more knitting in it, but there's no shaping, so I wanted to do something with shaping. So a jumper. As I said, I got this kit for Christmas last year and I had the deadline in mind of finishing it for July because I was going on holiday to Orkney, which it's not Shetland, but it's the closest I've been to Shetland, so I really wanted to finish it for that trip so I could wear it, and I did, so I was really pleased about that. This is it. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. The colour work itself I think is fairly neat, like I think I did an alright job. I did get my gauge wrong though, and you know, that's partly my fault for not doing a gauge swatch. Well, okay, I say I didn't do a gauge swatch, but I was knitting a pair of socks using the same yarn and the same needle size. So I measured the gauge of those and it was like slightly bigger, so slightly fewer stitches per 10 centimeters, but maybe only like 1 stitch. So I just thought, you know what, I don't want the jumper to end up too small, and I was really afraid that by changing needle size and going down a size it would end up too small. I generally try to err on the side of too big if I'm unsure, so it's my fault that it ended up too big. I kind of knew it was going to happen. I think in hindsight I should have gone down a needle size. I just used the recommended sizes for the pattern, which is a 2.75 needle for the like plain stocking stitch part, and then you go up to a 3.25 for the Fair Isle part. And The other strange thing that happened with this one though is I think that my tension changes depending on how many stitches I have on the needle, which is really annoying because it makes swatching kind of pointless. So I find that like the fewer stitches I have on the needle, the tighter I knit, but when I have more stitches on the needle, I knit looser. So in this jumper, for example, so it's knit bottom up, I should mention that first. So I started by knitting the sleeves and I knitted them both together on the same needles, and then I did the body and then joined it all in the round. But this one, as you can see, the colour work starts at the top of the sleeves and the body. So you do a few rounds on 3.25mm needles before joining it all together. And I think my tension was okay here. But then when I joined it all together, it became like a little bit looser around here. And I don't really know if you can see it because you repeat this motif at the top, and this one, it's that you can see like the tension is slightly looser than it is down here. So it does kind of like, it puffs out ever so slightly around the shoulders. Hopefully it's not too noticeable when I wear it. Like, I notice it, but who knows if other people do. But it's still a lovely sweater, like it's really cozy. When I made it, I sort of imagined like being outdoors, going on hikes, going on walks. The colour and the pattern, it's all inspired by nature as well, so I thought it would be a nice jumper for that kind of thing. It's not really one that I wear around the house. It's also like the wool, it uses Jamieson's of Shetland Spindrift 4-ply, which is one of my favourite yarns. I love it so much. Like the colours are just beautiful. It's really fun to knit with. It's like kind of sticky, so it works really well for colour work. I want to say that it's woolen spun rather than worsted spun, so it means that there's like a lot of air in it and it just makes it slightly kind of fluffy and like the fibres kind of stick together. So when you do knit colour work with it, it helps the colours just to kind of blend together a bit rather than have like the really distinctive stitch definition, which is not always what you want with colour work. I think if you're sensitive to wool, you probably won't like it because like it's a little bit scratchy. As I say, I've made a scarf in this though, and it really doesn't bother me with that. I sometimes find it difficult to wear things around my neck. When the edge touches my neck like that, I find that more scratchy than if it was just like flat against my neck, if that makes any sense. Probably not. Overall, like I'm really happy with it. I just, in future, I would probably go down a needle size if I ever made it again, which I won't. But if I make something similar, maybe like a 3mm needle for this part, maybe the same size needle, maybe like a 2.75 for the body and a 3mm for the colour work. But yeah, overall I do really love this jumper. I always get compliments when I wear it. Like people will ask me if I knitted it myself and I get to be like, yes I did. Which is all we want as knitters, right? Like that's the main reason we knit, to get compliments, surely. The next thing that I'm going to talk about, I don't actually have anymore because it's for somebody else and they have it now. And I will try to put a picture in. It was the Storm Sweater Man by PetiteKnit. And yeah, I had a lot of fun knitting it. I really love these kinds of patterns, and she's got a couple of them. One of them is the Ingrid sweater, which I've made before for myself, and this is like a very similar kind of thing where it's like kind of like a Gansey style, where it's just different stitch patterns and it's got different sections with all different stitch patterns in it. I find things like that really fun to make because I think you can measure your progress more easily. I think sometimes when you're just knitting in stockinette, it can feel like you're just knitting and not making any progress because it all looks the same. Whereas I always think to myself like, okay, I'll just knit into the end of this little section, and then I get to the next bit and I'm thinking, well, I'll just knit to the end of that section. So it motivates me to keep knitting. I can see my progress, and yeah, it just changes a lot, so it's fun. It always keeps me interested, and I like things like that. I get really bored knitting stocking stitch. So the yarn I used was Drops Karisma. It was the first time I used this yarn. I was really impressed with it actually. I'd heard like mixed things about it, but I think just for like a basic wool, I thought it was really great, and you can't really go wrong. It's so cheap, and I think I got it on sale as well, so it was maybe like $1.50 per ball, and I used maybe, I have no idea how many balls I used. It was like 17 maybe. It was a size extra large that I made. So it was really fun to knit. I really enjoyed the process. It's definitely the biggest jumper I've ever made, being for a man as well, and they're just longer. I think it fits well. I've never actually seen it on. I've seen pictures of it being worn, but I've not seen it on. I think it's an oversized style anyway, so I think it is like roomy. But as I said before, I always try to err on the side of too big rather than too small, especially if it's for someone else. You don't want it to be too small. And the sleeves, I think they are quite long, but he said that it was the first time he had a jumper where the sleeves were long enough because he's very tall. So that's a good thing. So yeah, I was very pleased with that. And I actually made the same pattern again, but I made the child's version, which I do have. So this is the Storm Sweater Junior, I think. The sleeve is tucked inside itself. And for this one, I used Drops Lima, which is really similar to the Drops Karisma. It's got the same meterage. It's just got a bit of alpaca in it as well, so it's really extra soft. And yeah, this is for my daughter. She's worn it loads. It's a bit dirty. I need to give it a clean, but I'll probably just like spot clean where the marks are. And yeah, it's just so cute. I really love it. I don't really knit that many baby knits or like child knits. As I've said already, and this is going to be probably a running theme throughout the video and throughout any videos I put out, I always have several projects on the go at once. It can take months or maybe even years to finish a jumper. So for babies or children, obviously, they're going to grow out of it if I take months to finish it. And that usually does happen, but with this one, I just really wanted to finish it. So I kind of focused, I made myself a monogamous knitter for the duration of this one anyway. And I also made like the size up. I have an issue as well with children knits. I always make them too short. Whether that's because maybe they fit at the time, but by the time I finish like the sleeves, she's grown out of it already. So that's probably why they end up too short. And I always do like a regular cast off. I don't really know what you call it, but just like the one where you knit 2 stitches and pass the first one over the second one, rather than doing an Italian bind off, because it's easier to unpick it if it does end up being the wrong length. I can just go back, or I can add length to it if she does like grow a lot. Yeah, I love this so much. I want to make one for myself at some point, but we'll see. We'll see if I get the time. So following on from that one, I'm going to talk about the only other like baby knit that I've done. I keep saying baby knits, like she's not a baby, she's 3. So I'm just going to button it up because it's a cardigan, and it's always easier to show cardigans when they have their buttons in. So this is the other thing that I made for her this year, little cardigan. So the wool for this and the pattern was present from my partner's parents. They went on holiday to Norway earlier this year, and they brought me back some wool because obviously like they know that I love knitting. They brought me back this knitting kit, and it had some Sandnes Garn Gynt in it in this colour, which I think was called Vintage Rose. I will double check that. And it came with a pattern to make this little cardigan. The pattern was written bottom up, but I am not a fan of bottom up construction. I think in the future, if I want to make anything that's written bottom up, I'm just going to have to convert it to top down because I just find it so much easier and I enjoy the process more. And because this is a fairly simple cardigan, like it's just a raglan cardigan in broken rib, I just, yeah, managed to work it out backwards. It wasn't too difficult. It was probably more difficult than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be really easy, like you just switch the numbers around. I think part of the reason it was slightly more difficult was because the pattern is in Norwegian, which I do not speak. I know like a couple of knitting related vocabulary, but it doesn't really help when it comes to reading knitting patterns. But as I say, it's like a fairly simple pattern anyway. I've knitted enough raglans to know the process. I just need the numbers. So I need to know how many stitches to cast on, how many rows I need to work here. And then that's basically it. Like, you can just kind of guess the rest, because once you've got down to the body, I'm just knitting it to the correct length. So I don't really need to follow the pattern for that. And same with the sleeves, like, you know, you just decrease every so often and then knit it to the length that you want. So yeah, it was a really quick knit. It was really fun to knit, and yeah, it made me want to knit more baby things, which was why I ended up knitting the storm sweater. The kit also came with a couple of skeins of mohair, which I think I was supposed to hold with the wool, which I didn't do because I just thought she might not want to wear it if it's got mohair in it. Not everybody likes wearing mohair. I sometimes do, I sometimes don't, I don't know. I just thought it was safe option was to just leave mohair out. It's really cute, and I do want to make another one in a slightly bigger size. I did knit this one slightly too short, so I might unravel the end and knit it longer, although I'd have to like undo the button band, so we'll see. I probably won't do that. Also, I only just had enough wool to make this. I think the kit came with 5 skeins of wool, which works out about 450 meters, and I wasn't like convinced that was going to be enough, but it just was. But yeah, if I knit the bigger size, I would definitely get an extra skein. I kind of want to make one for myself, like in a me size. I think it would be fairly simple to do. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is some of the socks that I finished this year. This was actually the very first project of this year, and I used, again, it was some wool that I got for Christmas. My sister got me this sock set from the Woolchemist, which is a hand dyer based, I think they're based in Scotland. I think she got it at the Scottish Yarn Festival. And yeah, this is the sock that I made with it. Sorry, I have worn it a bit. It's a bit out of shape now, but I'll hold it up so you can see. So I wanted to make, I didn't want to just make like a vanilla sock, but at the same time, because it's hand dyed yarn, I sometimes think that when you use like intricate patterns, it just gets lost in the colours. You can't really see the pattern very well. And I didn't want to, you know, go to the effort of making like a really beautiful lace or cabled sock and then not really be able to see the pattern. So I wrote this pattern myself, and it is just like a basic vanilla sock, but it's just got this broken rib in sections, and it just makes it slightly more interesting to knit. So every second row you're just doing like the occasional purl stitch. It's still kind of, you can still kind of switch off while doing it, but it's not overly repetitive, I guess. I knew that I wanted to write this into a pattern, and this ended up being my very first pattern, the Penelope socks, which is a free pattern on my Ravelry. It's actually a pay what you want pattern. So it's got a price, but there's a code to get it for free. So it will always have that code. You'll always be able to get it for free. So yeah, I finished this sock in maybe January. I kind of casted it on straight away because I just thought the colours were so pretty. I have a little bit of the yarn left, probably not enough to make another pair of socks, but I could use it for like colour work or something. As I said before, one of my goals for this year was to put out my first knitting pattern. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I've had like various ideas over the years, and you know, I've started writing them up, I've started grading them and knitted samples for myself. And yeah, they just like, there was maybe like small issues with them that made me, I wasn't so confident turning them into patterns. So I thought, I'm just going to start simple. I'm going to start with socks. I've knitted a few versions of them now. This is my second sample for myself. So this one's a size 2 or medium. I can't remember if I did like 1, 2, 3. There's 3 sizes, So this is the second size, and this one is the first size. And again, it's a bit out of shape now because I've worn it so much. And then this one is in a more plain yarn. It does have a bit of glitter in it. This is the Glitterball sock yarn from Woolin the Gang. But I wanted to do one that was a more plain colour to kind of show the pattern, but it does work really well with colour work as well, I think. So yeah, these are my Penelope socks. So the other socks that I've knitted, these ones are, I actually started them last year. I knitted the first sock and then just put off the second sock for so long. But I'll show you them again. They've been worn a lot, so apologies. I don't know if you can see the pattern very well. This is called the Suokatu sock. It's from 52 Weeks of Socks. This is a really beautiful book. I love it so much. It was the first pattern that I made from it. And I used Lang Yarns Merino Yak sock yarn. And it's got like these mock cables all over to create this really interesting sort of shape, very like geometric effect. Yeah, this at some points the cables can be slightly fiddly, I guess, because they're all kind of condensed together. But otherwise, you know, it's a really beautiful sock pattern. I really enjoyed knitting it. Okay, so the next sock pattern that I'm going to talk about is another one of my own. I released 2 patterns this year and they were both socks. So these ones are the Giverny socks, and they've got this all over lace pattern, and this pair have got a picot wedge. This was the first sample that I made, but I made a second sample with like a 1x1 rib edge as well. I don't know how well you can see it because it's quite a dark colour of yarn. And there are instructions in the pattern for either cuff option. Like, it's a really simple modification to do the 1x1 rib, but I just wanted to include instructions anyway and show people what it would look like. If you're an experienced enough knitter, it's easy enough to modify things yourselves, but I still think it helps to see like what it will look like, and it just shows you that there are like several different options. So I knitted this first pair in Filcolana Arwetta, which is a merino sock yarn. This is the colour Marzipan. I think it's really pretty. I really love this pair. They're so soft as well. And this second pair I made using Rowan sock wool, and I think the shade was called Ruby. I don't love this sock wool. I wouldn't use it again. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it either. Like, I'm really happy with the finished socks and I do wear them a lot, but it wasn't very fun to knit with. The wool is it's very like loosely spun, so it splits a lot, and the nylon kind of sticks out a lot as well. So, and while you can't really see the nylon in the finished pair, but when you knit with it, the nylon is like really obvious. And I don't know, it wasn't my favorite to knit with, but I will wear this pair a lot. I just wouldn't use it again, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But I really, really love the Filcolana Arwetta because it comes in 50-gram skeins. It makes it good if you want to make some colourwork socks, which I am working on now. So I've just realised I've not actually spoken about what I'm wearing yet, and I did knit this this year. I knitted this in summer, like June maybe, I can't remember exactly, July. And this is the step-by-step cardigan by Handmade by Florence. This is a free pattern, although it's a pay what you want pattern as well. It's actually where I got the idea to make my Penelope socks a pay what you want pattern. And not only that, but she's also put a video on YouTube on how to make it, so she takes you through every step of making a cardigan. So if you're a beginner and you want to make your first cardigan, this is a really good pattern to use because all the instructions are up there. I used Isager Aran tweed to make this. I've got a little bit left over. I originally bought 5 skeins to make it. Like, I'd kind of done some calculations and I thought I might be able to get away with 5. I did not. I ran out almost, so I'd knitted the cardigan, I was like doing the button band, I'd kind of gone all up around and I got to about here in the button band and I ran out. So I only had like this much left to do. So that was a little bit annoying. I bought another skein and I'm trying to like knit a little accessory with what I've got left over. I'm holding it with some mohair this time just to kind of, firstly to make it go a bit further, and because there's not quite a full skein here. Also just to kind of soften it up. I didn't hold this with anything, I just knit it on its own. And yeah, it is really lovely, but I do think it would like benefit from having some mohair just to kind of, just to soften it a little bit. It's quite a dry yarn. I really love it, but it was quite awkward to knit with sometimes because the yarn itself has like, it has no stretch. It's very rigid, and as I say, it's quite dry as well, and quite, I don't know if coarse is the word, but it's just, it's not soft. But it's also not scratchy at all. Like, I don't find it irritating to wear. It's really nice to wear. This one is, I think it's slightly heavier than the recommended yarn. So I think Florence knitted hers in Noro Madara, maybe, which I did look up at first, and it has a meterage of about like, I think it's 200 meters per 100 gram hank. This one is like more of an Aran weight. It's like about 165 meters per 100 grams. So it's quite thicker. So I used a 4.5mm needle for this one, whereas I think the pattern recommends either a 5 or a 5.5. I had to size down. And yeah, it's like a really thick, cozy cardigan. It kind of feels more like a jacket in a way than a cardigan because it is quite, I don't know if like stiff is the word, but yeah, it's not very drapey. It's quite like rigid, but in a way like that's really good because it doesn't feel like it's going to stretch out over time. It feels like it's going to keep its shape. So if you're looking for like a yarn for a project that you want it to keep its shape, then I would recommend this one. It doesn't really come in that many colours, which is one of the downsides of it, I guess. There's like one pink, one blue, one yellow, one green, one red. There's not really any variation in there. So this is the pink. I absolutely love this colour. I think it's so pretty. It reminds me of like cherry blossoms. I really, really love it. And I would love to use it again for something, even though I've already got one cardigan in this colour. I don't really need another one or another jumper in it, but I think it's so pretty. So I would use it again. Again, maybe held with a mohair to make like a jumper, but I don't know, we'll see. I don't think it's something that I really need in my life right now, but I just want it. One last thing before I start talking about like the things that I'm still knitting for Christmas. I made this little frog. Now, you probably recognize this little frog. He's a very famous little frog. Not mine, but the pattern is really famous. It's by Claire Garland, or she goes by Pebbles Knit, and she is just amazing. Like, she writes the most beautiful patterns for like little knitted animals, which are like, they're very realistic but not creepy, which I think is a very difficult thing to achieve in knitting. I'm so in awe of how she designs and writes her patterns. I've knitted a few of them before. I've made it's not Jemima Puddle Duck, but it's like heavily inspired by Jemima Puddle Duck and one of her little ducklings. And so yeah, this year I made this little frog. I just used some leftover, I used a sock yarn held with a mohair. I think I used 2.5mm needles for it. And I need to knit him some clothes because poor little frog's so cold. It's just one of those things, like, I know I could probably do it in like an afternoon because it's so small, but I just never get around to doing it. So I will knit him some clothes soon. Little froggy won't be naked for much longer. I'd also like to knit him a little friend. I think if I made another one, I maybe wouldn't use mohair, I just use like a sock yarn. He's so cute. There's like a really well-known Instagram account called India Rose Crawford. She makes the most beautiful little videos with these little frogs featuring in it. So yeah, they're so cute. Okay, now I'm going to talk about my gift knits. I'm kind of running out of time. So I will go on to, what I've been making people for Christmas this year. And I'll start with the one that I've actually finished. So these are a pair of mittens for my mum. This is the Alma mittens by Maja. And I mentioned Handmade by Florence already, but I was inspired to make these because she made them and talked about them in her video, and I thought they looked really cool. And it's a really nice gift knit because they're made on double knitting yarn, so it's a bit faster than 4-ply mittens. So this is what they look like on. They are really big, really roomy. That's fine. I have quite small hands, and last year I tried knitting my mum a pair of gloves. I didn't follow a pattern, but I just did it freehand, and I was measuring them on my own hand, but because I've got really small hands, I was like, I need to make them bigger than my hand, but I don't know how much bigger. In the end, I just gave up with them. So I think the fact that these are quite roomy on me is probably a good thing, because you don't want them to be too tight. You want them to be just like thick and cozy, because they use a double knitting yarn and their colour work, so you have like, it's basically double thickness throughout. I think these will be really warm, really cozy. The yarn I used was Rauma Fevel. It's the first time I've ever used that yarn and I really loved it. It's very thick, it's very like, it's quite soft and quite fluffy. I will definitely use it again. I got one skein of each colour and I just had enough. I was very close to running out of the blue. I was a bit worried that I was going to run out, which is why I was like motivated to finish these now, just in case I needed to order more. But I didn't need to, so I'm very pleased about that. So yeah, those are from my mum. The next one is still a work in progress. So I don't really have much to say about it, to be honest. This is going to be a weekend hat. It's for my dad. I'm using Peruvian Highland wool by Filcolana. It's just a 1x1 rib hat, so you know, there's not really much to say, and I haven't finished it yet. So I've got about 10 days to finish it. My parents are coming to stay at mine for Christmas, so I need to finish it before they arrive. But I should be able to do it. I did all this in about like 1.5 days maybe. So yeah, I feel like I should be able to finish that. I just hope it fits. I'm making the largest size. Okay, so the final gift knit that I'm doing this year is this pair of socks, which are for my partner. And this pattern I'm writing myself. This is the second time I've knitted this sock because the first time I knitted it, it was too small. But that's fine because now I know that that can be the size down from this one. This is going to be the largest size, I think. And it's got this, like colourwork motif. It's like an argyle pattern. Yeah, you see this pattern a lot in like golf clothes. My partner really likes playing golf, so I just thought it would work quite well. He probably won't wear these to play golf, but it was just kind of like a little nod to his love of golf. I've not really got much to say about it yet because it's not finished. This is the first sock still. I kind of need to measure on him again, just to see how long I need to knit it. He hasn't seen them yet, but he does know that he's getting socks because I asked him to close his eyes so I could try it on him to make sure that it was going to fit. So yeah, he knows, I think he knows he's getting socks, but the pattern is still, well, it should be a mystery. He might have seen them lying around because I'm not very good at hiding them. I think this is going to be the last finished object. I almost completely forgot to talk about them. And these are my Norwegian mittens. So as I mentioned before, my partner's parents went to Norway earlier this year, and as well as bring me back that knitting kit, they asked me if there was anything else that I wanted, and I said, well, maybe just some yarn to make some Norwegian mittens, like Selbu mittens. And neither of them are knitters, but they did find some amazing wool shops, and yeah, they asked the lady who worked there, and she recommended this wool, which is Ask yarn. I'll put it in the description, or I'll try to put it on the page somewhere. It's a 4-ply Norwegian wool. It's quite a heavy 4-ply though. It's kind of almost a sport weight, I would say. So the pattern for these mittens, I found this amazing book in the library called Mittens from Norway by Nina Grönlund Sæther. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, I'm really sorry. And yeah, it's a really amazing book. I apologise to the library because I kept renewing it. I had it for so long. And this is one of the patterns from the book. It's called Westland Rose. And I did make a few modifications. The original pattern had some cable on the cuff, which I just left out. I just did this like 1x1 rib cuff with a little stripe in it. Other than that, this motif I didn't change anything about. I did change the back because it was just like vertical stripes and colour work, which I'm not really a fan of, like the look of vertical stripes in knitting. So all I did was like alternated the main colour and contrast colour every row. So it was a really simple change to make. I also changed this motif on the thumb, and this motif came from another pattern in the book. I started making another pattern and when I made these mittens, and they just ended up far too big, and I was already using a 2mm needle, so I didn't want to size down further. I didn't think it'd be very effective, so I just used a different pattern. But I kept a bit of the pattern from the original pair that I started making on the thumb. Yeah, I'm really happy with them. I just think they're so pretty. I love this shade of pink. As you can tell, I like pink. And they're really warm and cozy. I've got, I do have like a decent amount of both colours left. I've not actually weighed it to see how much there is, but I feel like I could probably get another pair of mittens out of it. Like maybe if I inverted the main colour and contrast colour, I feel like I definitely could get another pair, or maybe some socks. I also got the book from the same author, Socks from Norway, out of the library, and it's also got amazing patterns in it. So yeah, I will have a look. Those are two books that I would definitely buy for myself because they're just amazing. So she recreates like traditional Norwegian patterns for mittens or socks, but there's a lot of like history as well in the book. There's a lot of, she gives you a lot of like the background of the designs, which I think is really interesting. So I would really recommend those books if you're interested in learning a bit more about like traditional Norwegian knitting. They are really great books. Okay, so I think that's all of my finished or almost finished objects. Hopefully by the time this video actually goes out, I will have finished them because it will be after Christmas, so I really have to finish them. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making it to the end. I hope you found it mildly interesting, and I will be back with more videos, I hope. I'm planning on doing one about my knitting plans for the next year, and then I will just kind of update, just a kind of typical podcast style where I'll update you with my works in progress, my finished objects and things like that. But yeah, thank you so much. Hope you've had a very happy Christmas, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye.